can move through something like through like Sky Blue Sky, but then get into something like Star Wars and they can pretty much have any sound they want now. And that's also once Glenn Kochi got involved and the band as we know it now really cemented, definitely, everybody's a huge part of that. But
I think that's what appealed to me about the idea of playing with Wilco at all, to be honest. It's like I didn't have that on my radar. That just sort of fell in my lap, and I wasn't looking to join a rock band at that, this was 2004. But I knew that if I did it, that there'd be a lot of creativity and a lot of versatility and diversity in the music. And that's certainly been the case. And Jeff's a person who doesn't like to repeat himself too much in terms of how he produces records. And so the orchestral or instrumental textures of the records change. And, Sky Blue Sky is a pretty direct, in a way, modest sounding record because we were playing pretty much everything live in a circle with tiny little amps and no separation. Wow. And even more than half the vocals, I think, on that record are live. And on the other hand, if you listen to the live record that was done around the same time, then I'm actually using more of, I guess, what people think I brought to the band that sounded different, which is to say more distortion and looping and various effects that on some of the material kind of ramp things up a little bit, I guess.
Sure.
But it's been the same 6 guys now for almost 15 years.
Longer than it was with Jay Bennett in the band and the guys before that.
By far.
Point. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that means that it's working, and we all really still love playing together and love, the touring can be tiring, I suppose, but it's great. Obviously, because we're still doing it. We're not doing it because we have a hit. We have to go out and keep playing and make money that way. You know what I mean?
Right,
but,
you guys...
you hear about all these bands that don't even get along, but they play for years and years and years just to keep, I guess, making money. But I couldn't do this if we didn't all love doing it and if we didn't have sort of an unspoken level of commitment and adoration for the music and the band.
Well, Wilco's a band that I've seen quite a lot live. I would say, interestingly enough, not that you would necessarily picture the two together, but the bands that I have seen most live are Wilco and Squeeze. And
Squeeze,
yeah.
Wow, that was a surprise.
Yeah, see, so it's but there's and in particular Glenn Tilbrook's solo, because he without the band behind him, he can kind of just do whatever he wants to, and his shows are really, really interesting.
Wow.
But yeah, I've just developed such an affinity for both the music on the albums themselves and then what they can evolve into in a live setting. And you guys are one of the, not just elevating what is on the record, you can feel it growing on stage, and you can feel like there's been this evolution from the record to taking it out on the road, but you guys all seem to be having such a great time. And you in particular, if you watch you play, you see at some point it's like you have disconnected from this plane and moved to another plane.
Well, I just like sound, and the other thing is I do have a lot of latitude with Wilco in terms of my onstage behavior. Like, nobody's really telling me I can or cannot do things. So there's a lot of freedom there. So I just get into it, and it's easy to get into it because we're all really committed. So I don't have to worry about non-musical crap coming on stage. Once we start playing, that's all there's going on. It's just music, and so I don't have to be thinking in the back of my mind like, oh God, I wish so-and-so wasn't having trouble with his girlfriend because he's really sucking tonight. You know what I mean? It's just never, ever, ever on the agenda, or whatever. It's never an issue.
That's gotta be nice.
So, but I just feel like I'm still striving to play well, so I don't get too nervous playing with Wilco, and I don't get too nervous doing completely improvised music, but I get nervous pretty much doing everything else. So, even playing my own music tonight, I'll probably be on pins and needles much of the time.
It's a little bit different if the focus is more directly on you, isn't it?
Well, yeah, there's that. There's certainly the guitar thing too, the guitar solo, I should say. Guitar itself, obviously, maybe not obviously. I feel like I've benefited greatly from the fact that people understand and sometimes actually over-admire the guitar,
sure.
The electric guitar in particular. But, if I was an oboe player or a French horn player, I think I'd have to be a much better musician than I am at this point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it would be so hard to get jobs, to stand out and be ready for anything, I guess. So the guitar solo for me is sometimes just not of interest, If I hear someone like Julian play a guitar solo, it'll revive my interest in the solo. But sometimes I just don't want a solo. I just don't want a solo ever. I just want to play a song or just fit into the sound, fit into the song. Or just improvise, in which case sometimes it's simultaneous voices or it's a conversation. It's not this sort of isolated event we call the solo, and I think maybe put a little bit too much emphasis on, and which is how we ended up creating terms like shredding and all these kinds of things. And every once in a while I'll hear something where I actually think, wow, that really shreds, and it's exciting, but not that often,
It's funny. There is that kind of, from the audience member anyway, that moment of reverence for the solo. It's like, okay, the solo is going to happen. There's suddenly just this zeroing in on the individual with the instrument right there, and people. There's got to be also some sort of feeling of expectation that you pull in from everybody, like zeroing in on you at that point.
Not really, because I don't, at least not on a Wilco concert, I don't really think about being zeroed in on except on Impossible Germany, which is a nightly ritual.
That's such a great fucking song though, man.
Well, no, it's like this incredible blessing and a challenge that's issued to try to invest new life and new expressive possibilities into this, rather, I don't even know what word to use. It's a very unusual thing in our on the current musical landscape to have a guitar solo song that's not a shred fest and that's not. Yeah. I think about where one might look to find an extended guitar solo song that people like that has been done after, say, 1973.
Sure.
There aren't too many that aren't maybe metal or something, or some kind of well, obviously, I'm talking about popular music. I'm not talking about jazz or jazz fusion or anything. So there's that, but the rest of the time, I'm just trying to play what's in my head, or play what I think the song feels like to me, and how I can make that work. So that's the only thought that I'm having in those moments, And I have a million notes in my head going all the time, so it's hard to be tasteful. And I'm trying to learn to slow down a little bit sometimes, but it's pretty hard for me, Certainly recording is a different process, and somebody like Jeff Tweedy can draw things out of me that I really don't expect to be doing on some of his songs, and whether that's to get me to slow down or to get me to play something that one might term primitive, verging on incompetent. I'm down with that. Just as playing with the Geraldine Fibbers, which was such a privilege as a fan of that band. There were no real guitar solos in that band except on one song. I mean, they're little worked out solos, but they're always really short and to the point, except on one song, which was short and to the point. But the solo is supposed to sound like as Carla described it, a 14-year-old boy sitting on his bed in his bedroom, earnestly trying to play well, but he's horrible. And that's a song called Trash Man in Furs. And I was down with that. Mike Watt would ask for musical content based on metaphors that he would present to me. And so these kinds of things, I mean, Jeff's a little similar in that way as well. And these are great songwriters. I know that everyone knows Mike Watt as a fantastic bass player and punk rock legend and all that stuff. But I mean, if you listen to something like Contemplating the Engine Room, which was such an incredible session and so well thought out, I just think it's a brilliant work on so many levels. It's not just musically brilliant; it's conceptually brilliant.
It's a great concept album. I love that album.
And so that's great writing, and Carla, great writer. And certainly Jeff Tweedy is, amazing and really, really prolific at this point, and to the point where I'm amazed by how many songs he writes.
Does he ever stop writing?
Well, when we first formed the current band, he was going through some stuff, and I'd always heard from, well, not always, I'd heard from various individuals that Jeff was really prolific, but he wasn't then. He was going through some personal stuff, and that record was really a team effort. And as time has gone on, the last 14 plus years, he's just becoming more and more prolific. And the last 4 years or so are pretty far off the scale. I mean, it's
nuts. He's writing for Wilco. He wrote for the Tweedy album, and then now his new solo album. And then he was also writing songs for Mavis Staples. And then he's everywhere.
Yeah, and he has another solo record coming out for Record Store Day.
Oh, no kidding.
A whole other album called Warmer, to the sequel to Warm. And we just did some recording. We're working on some new stuff, and there's plenty.
Nice, wow,
it's really insane. But anyway, what I'm saying is that most of the songwriters I know, maybe not Mike Watt, because he does like to have some solo moments for his instrumentalists. They don't really want to hear any fancy schmancy finger wiggling on their songs. I don't know a single person who would ask to have some, the most virtuosic graduate of Shred College to come in and play on his or her.
Well, because they're playing on their terms and not serving
songs.
the music then, right?
Well, I guess it's just that it doesn't sound right to them. It doesn't sound like a song. And a lot of these people, I think a sort of sonic signature is more important than the notes a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Mark Rebo with Tom Waits. I mean, after his tenure with Tom, everybody wanted this sound that can't be replicated of Mark's, his presence in that music. But then, and he was doing the Rootless Cosmopolitans, which I think spoke to that sound a little bit, but it was a completely different kind of music. And now, if you listen to Ceramic Dog,
right, very different from
or his
any
protest music, you're not going to hear any of that. He's moved beyond that a long time ago.
He's got some great solo records too. Just
solo.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. And extremely uncompromising. And I understand, I guess is what I'm saying, why a songwriter would want Mark to play on his or her record, because he'll bring something that's not about look at me,
right,
to the song, but he's versatile and well trained.
Well, and that kind of, we're going a little all over the place here, but that